At the rate Johor Taksim were playing, especially with their fourth successive draw after their kosong-kosong draw with Liga Super China Shanghai Ports in the AFC Champions League Elites earlier at the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium earlier tonight. Could this be that moment where the region of Johor might end up either having decided that enough is probably enough? Probably it's time to throw a warning letter to all the players at the club, because from the looks of it, you could say that the Southern Tigers malang in their kosong-kosong draw. They did everything they could, but kecuali ngejaringkan goal, really. Every attempt that the Southern Tigers tried, they threw everything. They could even throw the sink, they could even throw the cupboard, they could even throw everything at the Shanghai Ports goal. And they still could not find the back of the net. That was the very frustrating part, how Johor performed. And already some of the fans online, after their latest result that ended in yet another draw, they will say probably enough is enough. I saw in those comments that some of them were calling for Cisco Munoz, the head coach, to be sacked. Some were also calling for Gyro, who gave everything but did not score. But also, as unfortunate as he was in not finding the back of the net, you could tell that Gyro struggled with the telepathy with his teammates, especially in certain decision makings in the first half, in where JDT were trying to keep piling pressure after pressure after pressure in trying to push a relative second string Shanghai Port side into breakdown. But for some reason, the Shanghai Port second choice goalkeeper, the number 12, who started in place of their regular Yan Junling, he performed heroics to frustrate Johor Darul Takzim, but that was only part of the story. You can say that the Shanghai Port goal was blessed with good fortune, considering that this was actually the Chinese champions' final game of 2025 before their season concluded. And they came to Johor without a number of key players. They only had a few key players on their roster, and also they were also fielding a number of fringe players in their attempt to just try out, to just give them a run out as they wrap up yet another season when they finish back to back domestic champions in the Chinese Super League. And the thing is, the Malaysian champions started off on the front foot, and you couldn't tell how many times. I mean, in the way that Cisco lined up his squad, you can tell that it's a wingback 5-3-2 formation with that crucial caveat of Bergson and Gyro pushing up front. But the fact is, as hard as Gyro and Bergson tried, neither of them could find the target. Bergson had quite a few shots that were saved by the Port's goalkeeper in the first half, and to compound matters, Gyro, the thing is, he had the technical ability to take on the Chinese opponents, especially the Chinese defense that were led by veteran China defender Zhang Lingpeng. And the thing is, with all that technical ability JDT had, they just somehow seem to lack the final touch. Whether it's like, I know it's the umpteenth time I've probably spoken about, okay, is it the case where Johor were actually trying to push everything, but they seem to still lack that X factor, the X factor that they were clearly lacking with the absence of ARIF AIMAN, who recently just had his surgery in Finland and is recovering from his hamstring injury. Then something doesn't add up somewhere, because as technical as those players are, they somehow, as a whole, were able to pass from left to right, from front to back. But when it came to the final third, when it came to that game locking, the moment, the game defining moment where you need to unlock a very resilient Shanghai Port backline, or the Shanghai Port, those white shirts that were guarding the Shanghai goal with all their lives, especially the more desperate Johor were throwing men forward in the second half, the more determined they were to try everything they could to keep Johor at bay. And following that 2-2 draw last season in the same league stage in the ACLE, this time round they wanted to end their 2025 season on a positive note, and they did deliver it despite missing several key players. Ule did not travel, quite a number of other key players did not travel to Johor for this match. The second choice started, quite a few reserves also got thrown into the fray, and the foreigners, they were there, they did try, but they were more focused in putting up a resilient, you can see the iron wall, the way their head coach Kevin Muscat would have been very proud of. And here lies the problem. Despite the sheer dominance, despite the waves after waves of attack, laying siege at the Shanghai Port goal, pushing as hard as they could to try to break the deadlock from the first minute to the final, to injury time, to just before the final whistle. But for some reason, really, the ball just refused to go into the back of the Shanghai Port net. And whether it was Bergson, it was Gyro, it was Jonathan Silva, who twice, when he had that chance to slam home from low crosses by Gyro on the right, rushing in from the left wing, back row, both times he somehow managed to send both attempts over. Something is not clicking somewhere in this current Johor Darul Takzim squad. And to make matters worse, you got Gyro having his shots blocked. Sometimes when the teammates needed him to move in a certain direction, he somehow did the opposite. That's why the fans were not so happy. Bergson was trying his darndest best to try to plug the gap, the big shoes that was left behind by ARIF AIMAN. The thing is, he made those volleys, he forced the keeper into saves, he forced the man of the match into several heroics when he was peppering those shots at goal, but it just would not go in, including one that hit the crossbar. How much more do they need to do to stop, to get past either, if not this Shanghai Port second choice goalkeeper who won man of the match for his heroics, or that goal, that done goal? It's like nothing, everything. They hit the post, they hit the crossbar, they hit the gloves, they hit some white shirts. Every attempt they made later on late in the game, you got Tattoo Martin, you got Gyro trying until the final minute, but something did not add up because Port were just throwing bodies to keep those shots at bay. Port knew that they are probably not likely to advance to the knockout round, but they want to improve from their very poor start to this ACLE campaign. And despite missing those players, a number of key players, Port came out of Sultan Ibrahim Stadium with a point, another precious point away. But it is not good news for the Southern Tigers, because if I were the Sabah head coach right now, after watching this game, I think I'll have an idea how Sabah can defeat Johor for the Piala FA Malaysia final, because there is something of a crisis of confidence. There is something of like that kind of unprecedented crisis that has not been at the club for a long time, when they began their ascendancy, their dominance, and yes, they're still dominant in the Malaysian Super League. But something tells me that with 4 successive draws in the ACLE, the latest, then you have your Shopee Cup, and then you got yet another game where they also had a draw as well. Something tells me that it's not exactly adding up very well. And when they spurned one of the best opportunities to build up double-digit points in what was probably, in reality, a winnable game against a Chinese team that was just content to finish out the season, they played with a lot of pride. Kevin Muscat did an excellent job in organizing Shanghai Port and make them very frustrating to break down. And Johor, crucially, for all their shots that they peppered, just could not unlock the Port's goal. If it's not the gloves, it's somewhere else. It's the frame of the goal. That was how poor JDT are right now. And I mean, before I did this video, I actually had a quick glimpse of this interview Haris did with a podcast, and where he actually mentioned that back in 2013 or 24, I think in 2014, when they were losing to Kelantan, they were not doing well. The Tugu Mahkota of Johor, Ismail Ibni Sultan Ibrahim, he was warning the players over the phone that if they did not win, or if they did not even get a single point from the game, everybody's salary would be cut by half. And apparently that fear factor worked, as they fought for a draw. But after that draw, they were all given warning letters, and we do not know whether this current Johor Darul Takzim squad, without the influence of ARIF, is now feeling that lack of confidence. It's like they have the technical ability, they have the tactical shape, they have the composure. Cisco also did himself the odd favor by taking out Nacho himself, who was becoming error prone in this game. He was crucial in giving away possession at critical moments and was not exactly the central midfield force the way he was. He was still trying to be the orchestrator, but certain things did not seem to work now. They could read what they were, Shanghai Port could read what JDT were trying to do. They knew that ARIF AIMAN was out, so I suspect on the mental side, Johor were down a notch. And that, by being down a notch, was where Johor found themselves undone in this AFC Champions Elite competition. And we do not know whether warning letters have been sent to the Johor players, or whether the region of Johor will now need to talk to the players personally to give them some warning before the Piala FA Malaysia final. Because if I'm the Sabah coach, I know these guys are good, but they lack confidence. There is that slight chance of upsetting them the way Kuala Lumpur City did against Johor in the 2022 Piala Malaysia final a few years ago. And crucially, POC put a big dent that has not been there for quite a while. And the desperation you can see in those Johor faces is like they're throwing everything, but something was missing. They still could not resolve how they were going to play in those games without ARIF AIMAN, which is pretty ironic because, as I said a few times in different videos, without ARIF AIMAN, Johor, for some reason, become a collection of individuals. Bergson was doing all he could to be that focal point in the absence of ARIF, but you could tell that for some reason, something is not adding up, really not adding up. And Bergson is unfortunately, in a way, found out in the highest level of Asian club competition. he was not that unpredictable. Tougher defenders would have been able to have a decent handle of him, even though he did try to force goals to, I think you can say, to ease that pressure that was building up from the home side. And the more pressure they felt, the more desperate they got. And the more desperate they got, they threw everything and nothing still happened. Nothing. All you could see was shots over, hit the post, hit the bar, hit the glove, hit the body of some Shanghai Port player, and then play some injury and all these things. And anything, just not at the back of the net, really. And by towards the end, it's like, I think Cisco has already run out of options. I really did say that after their come from behind heroics to secure a 2-2 draw against Priyakanrich Sering in the ASEAN Club Championship Shopee Cup last week, it's already game over for those four players. Samu Castillo, Nathaniel Hongwan, let me see who else. I think there was at least one or two more players who would not be Nasmi Faiz. To an extent, Sharusa, but Sharu was on the bench today. I forgot who was the fourth one. But it's very clear that Cisco has run out of options from the players he had at his disposal. The huge squad that was supposed to be able to compete of all fronts. But yet, he chose Shihan as the first choice. To the Malaysia's number one's credit, he did make two vital saves to make sure that the game ended goalless with 1 point included in their tally. But with all having played all Chinese teams and ending with 2 wins and 1 draw, that's where the bulk of their points come from. And the other point coming at home against Machida Zelvia, it's going to be a very difficult task, really. Tigas yang sukan. And how difficult, because at the turn of the year, they're going to play Sanfrecce Hiroshima away. Before next year's first year of Chinese Lunar New Year, the league stage ending game at home against league leaders, the Group East Zone group leaders, Vissel Kobe. These are two very tough games against Japanese opponents, and having squandered the best opportunity to open up a double-digit point before the 2 games against J-League opponents, it's going to be a case of whether Cisco still has it. But I suspect Cisco should also go, really. He is not that capable of forming an alternative plan without ARIF AIMAN. And those cracks and that stubbornness in keeping those ineffective players. Gyro is not Obregon, but Gyro didn't have that telepathy at times. Tak ada telepathy. And with that tak ada telepathy, you can see how difficult it is for him to connect with the rest of Spanish players. It's like Arribas was trying to attack Eddie Isafilov. At one point, he turned libero, dribbling all the way from his own center back position all the way to the other end, only to see his shot go straight. I mean, that desperation was clearly there. And you don't have a midfielder who is able to hold the tempo once Cisco took out first Nacho, then first Nacho Insa, then Nacho Mendes, Afiq Faisal, and then finally Nacho Mendes, and throwing all the attackers and hoping that they could do some miracle, pushing up Eddie Isafilov into that midfield role where he's capable of fielding, but ultimately not good enough for as a whole team to find that 1 goal for the 3 points. Instead, it's no goals, 1 point, and two very difficult games coming up next year to conclude the ACLE league phase. And there is every chance that defeat away at Hiroshima and losing at home to Kobe, Vissel Kobe, at the start of, in the first day of Chinese Lunar New Year next year, elimination cannot be ruled out. And if elimination somehow happens after the Kobe game, Cisco should go. Really, I think this is where he will be judged. And the elusive chase for the ACLE quarterfinal will still continue. And ultimately, I think some of the imports they had, there were limits. Some are really one or two that reputation precedes the performance. One or two others is the age is catching up. A few others, for some reason, not good enough, really not good enough by JDT's high standards. So, is it probably time for the region of Johor to issue warning letters and perhaps salary cuts before the Piala FA Malaysia final? Because perhaps it's what former captain Haris Harun had said in a separate podcast. Maybe scaring those players might be the final trick that TMJ may need to throw after successive draws, which by JDT standards is really unacceptable.